Hey neighbor, welcome back to ARTV. My name is John, and it's time for another episode of 7 on Sunday. This week we're looking at great songs from bad albums, a relatively simple concept, but one that I'm making personal because I want this to be a journey through the years. With me having reviewed music online for so long, there's a lot of albums in my memory that I found more negatives with than positive, but it doesn't mean that there weren't good songs in the mix. I wouldn't actually say that I hate any of the albums on the list. In fact, I intentionally chose records that I wanted to like a whole lot more than I do, and there might even be some surprisingly positive comments that I have along the way, but again, I feel that the negatives outweigh the positive, and that's why they're here. The tracks that I've pulled for this countdown are all ones that I feel are either the best, or maybe they're tied for the strongest counterpoint to an otherwise bad or messy effort. Feel free to disagree or leave your own picks for songs that you like from albums that you're just not into in the comments down below. Please hit that like button before we get started because a like truly does go a long way, and let's dive right into number 7.
R.I.P. to my youth, and you could call this a funeral.
Wiped Out is surfable, boppable, and rhymable, but is it really all that listenable? I would argue against it actually being all that great. The Neighbourhood are a band that I started off on their side. I enjoyed their debut album I Love You, but I quickly grew out of the majority of what they were laying down because the Neighbourhood, and specifically this album Wiped Out, they just feel like they're trying to be a lot more cool than they actually are, so those shades of cool get washed out by the surfboard to the head. Wiped Out sounds like the soundtrack you'd hear playing at a teen clothing store, and it's very aware of how many shades of vibes it's trying to toss your way. It's an album that starts to fall apart as you look closer at the lyrics of tracks like Ferrari and Daddy Issues. They're just abysmal. However, at the very end of this record, we get to a track called R.I.P. to My Youth, which was also the lead single from this project, and oddly enough, it's the best song on the record by a long shot. Their frontman Jesse Rutherford uses this moment to pause and reflect and give himself a metaphorical funeral for a certain point in his life. The light shaky drum loop really works for me. I also like how crisp the guitar gets on this track. It's a very warm feeling. It starts to build and grow. And I also appreciate the tasteful use of auto-tune, and trust me, I've seen the Neighbourhood abuse it plenty of times in their catalog. This song is not on that level. You know, a lot of the runtime on Wiped Out was dedicated to the band dicking around and just giving into their own indulgences. R.I.P. to My Youth is focused. I love that it gets so big and over the top. There's this huge crescendo and instrumental payoff where we just feel like we're blasting off at a rate the rest of the album just couldn't accelerate to.
You can't pull me down, so Birdie, fly away.
Avril Lavigne went through a very difficult period in her life where she battled Lyme disease, something that can have so many different side effects and unknown causes, and it can just take a very long time to recover from. So I'm not trying to shoot down anybody's personal journey to healing or anything like that. But Head Above Water as an album is not representative of that struggle that she went through because it just feels impersonal, like it could have been written by anyone, and it even leans into some of the cliches of like the Christian contemporary genre that really confuses me knowing past Avril. Outside of a few cornerstones, this record just comes crumbling down when you pull out a singular card, whether that be I Fell in Love with the Devil or Goddess. God forbid we listen to that one again. The lyrics, the production, everything was just very homogenized. And outside of maybe like the titular track and also Birdie, I just don't feel like this album really flapped its wings and got to the point where it was soaring. Forgive the flying metaphor, okay? The song is called Birdie, and there's a lot of references to the fact that she's wanting to fly again, and you feel that when you're actually sitting down to listen to her experience. It feels like it's Avril's intimate thoughts, maybe a journal, and then she's finally getting to this point where she feels more confident and healthy again. While I wish the guitars were turned up just a little bit louder in the mix, I appreciate them for actually existing and having somewhat of a personality to stoke the coals in the fire and get a spark going. Avril delivered her best vocals on the entire record right here on Birdie, so of course I'm going to have a natural inclination to liking this one a whole lot more. It's like she's cutting through to reveal the wings of a phoenix where she can finally get back into flight.
Welcome to White Room, White Room, White Offerings.
I'll I'll take albums not deserving of their name for 1,000, please. The Blood album is something I've just not been able to rinse off my hands. Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned against AFI because I still feel that this record is extremely tired, monotonous, and creatively bankrupt to a degree. There's very similar bass lines and melodies that are recycled and reused, and it feels like when Davey Havok is trying to channel a certain dark arts aura, it's like, hey, I gotta go sit down and watch Donnie Darko again because my mind isn't feeling dark enough and maybe that's what the fans want from me? With so many stray notes flying about without a real intention or purpose, including some very out of focus guitar solos that just don't feel like they carry real weight or emotion, you can probably see why I feel that AFI might be better suited to the EP format, because if you take a selection of songs from their later years albums like Bodies or the Blood album, or you look to the Missing Man EP, I think they're stronger there. White Offerings and Snowcats came out as the first two singles, a double A-side release, and both of those are the best songs on the entire album, with White Offerings really taking the cake for me. This one absolutely slams, and you can totally see why they chose this one to come right out of the gate, just kicking and screaming, throwing punches. I love when they get into a lyric like, I can feel your color changing, and then it just drains you.
I guess I got no Valentine. Sipping roses, I just let 'em die.
I actually have a lot of nostalgia for Bangerz, and this era of Miley Cyrus. That's a weird admission to make on camera, but it came out in 2013. I was kind of in transition in flux. I think it was like 20 or 21 when it dropped. And while this album is unapologetically trashy, it's all over the place. Like Miley was swerving at the wheel, just crossing over lanes of traffic without even looking. I kind of appreciate that it's just unapologetically itself. Granted, Miley was totally out of control and it feels like attention seeking to the nth degree, but I still kind of like it. It's unreal, the sheer amount of disdain, but also pleasure you can get from a single album. And if I could compare it to anything, it's like a night out. As you get older, maybe you're in your later 20s, into your 30s, and you used to go drinking with your friends back in the day, and oh, no problem, I'll take 5 shots of whatever the fuck you throw my way. But now you're 30 years old and somebody hands you a shot of Fireball and you're like, oh, I'll never regret this tomorrow morning. And then you wake up the next day and you're like, oh my god, I can't do this for a long time. That's me with Bangerz. Suffice it to say, Bangerz is not a very fantastic or smooth experience. It's like driving over a bunch of potholes and getting launched into the air. But quite possibly the most underrated song in Miley's entire catalog lives here, and it's called Drive. Kicking electronic whirs and a loud bass atmosphere backs up Miley's biting lyrics for whatever ex she seems to be talking to, and I really appreciate that it just takes the time out to build its atmosphere, to live and breathe in that moment. Her vocals are incredibly satisfying, and I'm not entirely sure why. That hook goes off, it's a live wire, and I also love that this isn't just your standard pop affair that runs on for exactly 3 minutes and it hits the exit door. This one goes for over 4, and it takes the time out to build up that pulse and the bridge, and then finally drop us back into it as Miley really lets her voice soar. MANIA tries to live in 2 different worlds at pretty much any given time, but the unfortunate news for us is that only one of those is worth living in. How the hell does Bishop's Knife Trick, Wilson, and the last of the real ones live alongside the likes of Young and Menace, Sunshine Riptide, and give me a boost over Heaven's Gate? Let's admit it, Pete Wentz is way past his prime when it comes to writing slamming, biting lyrics that really leave an impression on you. I think he peaked around Infinity on High and Fully Due, but he can have his moments where he's not trying to be too deep, but it actually comes across as thoughtful. It gives us a trace of what we used to have, and that's exactly why I've come to love Bishop's Knife Trick even more over the years, because it feels like a send-off to the old Fall Out Boy and their fans. Look back at the darkest times that we've ever had, and cheers to that, for still being here, for surviving, and maybe even remembering the ones that we lost along the way. These gorgeous reverb-soaked guitars really liven up the mix, but also also give us those rose-tinted glasses where we're not sure if we want to look back fondly or we would rather look ahead and not remember those horrible times, the last blues that we're ever gonna have.
My heartache, it seems so terribly vain, where fire and diamonds fall like rain.
Cinematic is an overly long album that tried desperately to recreate the successes of the past and the old nostalgia and innocence and naivety that early Adam Young Owl City material captured so effortlessly. This album came out in stages, or reels as Adam called them, and I just feel that it gets off pace very quickly, and to put it bluntly, I just don't think the magic's there anymore. But somewhere deep in the depths of Adam's soul, he pulled out a diamond, and that diamond is Lucid Dream. It's as gooey and cheesy as the best Owl City moments in existence. It's innocent, but with a newfound respect for the real world, which really makes me care. That synth build-up gives me such a dopamine rush. It's just pulsating for so long, and it keeps you on the edge of your seat. It's not just a steady little tease, it actually takes you there, and it wraps Adam's voice in the mix of it all, but I love that it doesn't get lost. Music of the Spheres is sacrilege for Coldplay because I feel it's their first truly weak and overall bad album where I can confidently say that the negatives definitely significantly outweigh the positives. How the hell did a giant 10-minute rainbow make its way onto this album in the form of Coloratura? Did you take the wrong exit, or was this meant to be here? Standing amongst the ruins of cuts like Beautiful, which I can't even look at without feeling infuriated, we have this that just flies and soars straight out of space to actually hit a parachute and land on Earth. Divine, momentous pianos harken back to Coldplay's glory days, and Johnny Buckland puts on a show as the track rolls on. Now, I will say that maybe people are a bit overly praising towards it just because of the fact that, oh my god, it's so forward-thinking and they've never done something like this before. No, they haven't, but they also have done it better in the form of Yes, that clocks in around 7 minutes and is split up into 2 songs. For the majority of the record, it was like they forgot how to be a band and acted like robots up on stage for a crowd of faceless minions before finally coming back to reality to clear their heads with an effort that actually brought together everything they had done up to this point in their career. Thank you guys so much for watching another episode of 7 on Sunday and for supporting the show throughout the year. A like would mean a lot to me if you enjoyed the video, and also take to the comments and let me know your thoughts on any picks that maybe you have for a song that you love on an album that you hate. Other than that, you can see a couple of recent episodes of the show on screen now. My Patreon's linked in the description, and I'll be back soon for more on ARTV.